You are tuning into the LEHI, Low Ego, High Impact Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Volkan Emre, along with a dynamic team of Kellogg School of Management alums. We are here on a shared mission to uncover the mindset that drives impact and success. On LEHI, we have thought-provoking conversations with incredibly successful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and investors from around the globe. We uncover the mindset that drives them, allowing them to make a high impact without losing themselves to ego. Now, let's get started with today's episode. Hi from Bangalore, India. Today, my Kellogg Executive MBA classmate Kostas Poulakidas and myself are hosting Abhinay Choudhari, the founder of BigBasket.com, which is one of the largest and most impactful e-commerce ventures in the world. BigBasket was sold to Tata Group for over $2 billion valuation in 2021. Abhinay is also the founder of LaundryMate, a groundbreaking platform revolutionizing the way how laundry is done. We are at LaundryMate's headquarters in Bangalore, and we are thankful for Abhinay's hospitality. Thank you very much, Abhinay, for being with us today.
Thanks for organizing this, and I look forward to the discussion.
We do too. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some warm-up questions to get you know a little bit better, and we will be asking you some rapid-fire questions to get us all warmed up. Are you ready?
Yep.
Kostas, why don't you start?
Great. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Oh, mountains or beaches?
Beaches and actually both.
Okay. Fair enough.
Text or call?
Text.
Music or podcast?
Music.
PC or Mac?
PC.
Drive or fly?
Both.
Okay.
I'm going to ask a very interesting question now. Are you ready? What is worse, dishes or laundry?
Laundry.
Yes. I agree with you. What is the first app you open up in the morning?
WhatsApp.
Okay. WhatsApp.
Great. Yeah, as expected. So laundry is a bigger problem.
Yes.
I think we are going to be talking about that a lot.
You know what?
today.
Yeah, that was a key one. The well, you know, to get started, maybe you can go into. We were talking earlier about your background and what you've done, but let's start off with LaundryMate and what it is, the concept. You know, we're here in India. We've been here. You know, Volkan and I. We've been in Delhi for a week. We've been in Bangalore for a week. An absolutely amazing country. What might be not only amazing, but it's one thing to read it. It's another thing to see it. That you know, you have a country here, 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
Right. Amazing. What's also more impressive in terms of the engine of the ecosystem of entrepreneurship that's going on here is you have 60% of the country is under the age of 35.
Yeah.
Maybe even more impactful to just add to that is of 50% of the country is under the age of 25. Mm-hmm. You have a government that appears to be very pro startup entrepreneur.
Yeah.
They understand, you know, to create jobs for people, it's going to be startups. It's going to come through that private sector. There's only so much government can do.
Yeah.
But government can do a lot.
Yeah.
And they are. So you have that dynamic. You have what's incredible, probably one of the most, you know, how can I say it, is culturally, India, the emphasis they put on education is probably at the top.
Yeah.
So a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of a population, both consumers, but also this emphasis on education and this incredible drive.
Yeah.
And, you know, us being here, we can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, you can feel the energy of that. Maybe can you go into now, you know, that's our experience, but going to LaundryMate and but also correlate that to, you know, India.
Yeah. So, I mean, the picture you are really painting is of India, which is developing India, right? And for which has a huge middle class, right? And then this middle class obviously is aspirational, right? And the only way they think, or their parents think that, they can have better life is through education, right? So that's really the driving force, right? Everybody is kind of really focused on doing better in life by focusing on education, doing well. So parents who can't sometimes really, afford education, right? They work extra time, or they take loans and all for their kids to get educated, because they see that is the only way they can then have a better life, right? Because it's not a developed country as such, right? You are still very low per capita income and stuff like that, right? So that's the picture of the country. But at the same time, it's humongous in terms of the diversity itself, right? Be it weather, seasons, food, behaviors, right? So that's wherein actually the whole opportunity also lies, in the sense that since it is so diverse and since it is not developed, right? A lot of businesses today, especially in the customer service space, are very, very fragmented and unorganized, right? So taking example of laundry as an activity, right, is something which is completely fragmented, right? And there's no national player in the country. If you take example of any of the developed markets, I have lived in US, UK, right, Canada, everywhere. So you have a service provider to cater to every income level group, right? So you have people who are kind of organized catering to a low income. Then you have, let's say it could be laundromats where you can take your stuff. It's not expensive, but it takes time.
Sure.
Then you have in your neighborhood retail parks, the stores which are again organized and slightly upper middle class people can use them. And then you will have people at the high end, right? So there is a solution provider to cater to every level of the income group, which is not the case here. Right, you have a huge gap. You have at the bottom end, you have unorganized player, and then you have top end, which are really premium, right? So there is nothing in between. So majority of this work happens at home, right? Because it's and then that's kind of time consuming, right? So the reason really I kind of picked that space is at the end of the day, if you really see, the country has to really grow, right? The middle income, has to be much more productive. They have to stop wasting their time doing the mundane, kind of chores at home. That's when you save time and you become more productive, right? So the earlier one, which was the grocery, online grocery, it was addressing the grocery chore. Because there again, in India, the organized retail actually was a fraction of the overall retail. Right. So there are millions of these mom and pop stores across the country, which is called Kirana, right? Are the ones people were kind of really using for their grocery purchase, right? And then in 2002, 2003 is wherein the organized retail started, which is just like 10%, 15% of the overall, which is like close to... it's the biggest. I mean, or grocery as a category is the biggest category, right, in terms of the spend, right? So organized retail was a very small fraction of that, and that too was not very great in terms of experience, right? Because the whole back end, which is the supply chain, was not something which was very, very efficient. So example is that when I go to a supermarket, right, and if I go to a supermarket in US, UK, Europe, the availability on the shelf is very high. So if I walk in with a list of 20 items, I will pretty much maybe walk out with all 20 bought.
Sure.
Versus in India, you go to the first store, out of 20, we'll buy maybe only 13, 14 from one store. Then you go to the next one to buy another 3 or 4. So the on-shelf availability is very poor because the supply chain is not very efficient. Right. So on one side, you have the unorganized Kirana guys to deal with, which are you have to do phone and stuff like that. And then if you go to organize, it's quite painful, right? It's just not the buying in the store itself, but also you have to obviously drive down to that store on the kind of traffic which we have. The store will not have enough parking. So you have to really struggle to find parking, right? Then you get into the store, you pick all of this, you stand in the checkout queue. There will be only 1 or 2 tills. Right, so you have to spend like 15 minutes just waiting in the queue to check out, right? And then this you have to do like 3 times in the one shopping trip because you have not found everything in one store. So then you from one store to go to second store, and the third store, and you complete, right? Because your wife has asked you to bring all 20. If you don't come back with 20, then you're not getting your food, right?
So you wake up, you're shopping, and then you go to bed.
Yeah. So it was a very, very painful, wasteful kind of a journey, so to say, or, experience in offline grocery purchase, even in the supermarket, so to say. And then most of the times as working professionals, you will do this on a weekend, because that's when you can really find time to go and do this. So you'll spend 2-3 hours of your precious weekend time doing this stuff. And that's when everybody is going, right? So you have long queues, right?
Yeah.
So that's where in this whole online grocery, concept of how can we save this time, right? Because most of the times it's the same stuff you will keep repeating. I mean, any individual, once they kind of settle down on certain brands and certain variants, and you just keep buying that over and over again.
Sure.
Right? There's not much of a kind of exploration which really happens. So if you were to do that, then something which you can just do with a click in like a minute of reordering your old order, you are saving good 1 hour,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
To do that, right? So, and it's something that has to be bought very often, right? I mean, if you come to, let's say, fresh stuff, which is fruits and vegetables and any of the dairy and that kind of stuff, you are buying that every second, third day, right? So imagine you save all of that. Right. So that was one aspect of the whole thought process. How do we make this whole, grocery chore experience, right, where you can save the time? And in fact, we started showing to the customers that, by the way, you have saved so many minutes, so many hours.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So we are showing in my account how much time they have saved, right? So coming from that kind of, and there were some other issues in terms of the quality of the product itself, because there is no standardization, there is no sorting of fruits and vegetables, which also was a challenge, because people going to the market because they want to pick the fresh by hand, by feeling and touching, because that's the only way you can pick good quality.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's not sorted out, right? So it's all a mix, right?
Yeah.
So I have to pick the best out of that heap, right? Hence I have to go. So once you say, no, I'll send you everything sorted and standardized, then there is no need to go, right? So those were some of the reasons why this kind of picked up. And it grew. I started in 2010 from Bangalore. Then we launched Bombay and Hyderabad. And then afterwards, it was launched across 35 cities in the next 5-6 years, right? So that was a good journey. So same customer, the same target segment is facing this problem, right? When you are spending a lot of time managing your laundry at home.
And
right?
for the, allow me to interrupt here for a second to have a parenthesis here.
Yeah.
Everything you have been talking about so far is actually the story of bigbasket.com, right?
Yeah.
So, and this is a startup company. It used to be, it's a giant right now, that you started out of Bangalore.
Yeah.
And you sold it to Tata Group.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, in 2021.
Yeah.
And it's one of the biggest e-commerce
Yes.
initiatives in the past decade.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to indicate that for our listening audience, because it's very important and to know about this fascinating story of bigbasket.com.
Right.
So, and then what you're building is on top of that experience.
Yes.
And you're saying that the client segment is actually the same.
Yes.
And you are right now in the journey of solving yet another problem of they're facing day to day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, from one town, it grew to 35 towns, and we were the number one grocery online grocery retailer in the country, close to 1 billion in terms of turnover, right? And then Tata's bought 65% at a 2 billion valuation. So that's been the journey with that particular entity. Now, so coming to laundry, it is even more kind of a painful, because same customer segment, same target segment, facing similar issues, and this is actually more frequent. Right? Yeah. Because grocery shopping, as I said, you might do once in 3 days, but laundry you're pretty much doing every day. Right? Every day at home, and it involves a lot of time to kind of manage this. And then, of course, there are options to outsource part of it, but then that's again very, very fragmented, very, very unorganized, right? So you end up dealing with multiple players to get your stuff done, right? You have a maid at home, maybe, so the high income groups will have maid, washing machine, maybe 2 living maids, 2 washing machines, but their time involved in the whole process is close to half an hour per day. We did a 30-town study with registered consulting to arrive at what is the real pain, what is the times being spent by the homemaker in managing this on a day-to-day basis. The value of that time spent by homemakers across 30 towns is $14 billion. That's the value of the time being spent doing this activity.
That's amazing.
Right? So it's an immeasurable cost. I mean, it's not part of the, the addressable marketing, but that's an immeasurable cost. Second part of the immeasurable cost is the water being consumed, right? So 70 liters of water is what you consume for every, washing machine, one cycle. And that just goes down the drain without any recycling. So we are attacking the two sides of it. We are saying that one side, obviously, you are wasting a lot of time doing this. So if you save that time, then obviously you can do things which you like, right? And hence our tagline says, LaundryMate, it's about time.
Yeah.
It's about time is two things. One, it's about time that you start using something like this.
Sure.
And finally, it's about time you start saving your time.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is a resource which, you cannot regenerate, right? So you have to kind of start saving that, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the one side of the story. And then in the process, what happens, you become more productive. When you save time and you are not kind of, dependent upon all of these things on a daily basis, then you release yourself from that and then you become more productive, right? So as middle income, as I said, the country has to grow, you have to become more and more productive,
sure.
Right? So just an example. So there were memes floating around when on the big Bangalore traffic situations, right? So there, it was mentioned that the Indian software developers in their startup, and as a solution to the global, they write codes which help them deliver grocery in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. But the guy takes 2 hours to reach to his office. Right? And then second meme was around, a guy was going back home driving in his car, and then his colleague is just walking right on the pavement. So this guy who's driving, he asked his colleague, "Hey, come, I'll drop you." So the guy said, "No, I'm in a hurry."
But you're right. It is about productivity, right? What you be doing with that time. But it's also, I would, and this is interesting in terms of the evolution of India. It's also about, I would say, quality of life too.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Right. It's, you can choose to be more productive with that time, or you can choose to spend it with your kids, right, or spend it doing something else.
Exactly.
Putting extra effort into a special dinner or something like that brings value.
So that's our actually brand identity, which is inspired by a concept called pareidolia. So LaundryMate logo, if you see, there's that L and M written in different forms, different ways.
On your
right?
shoulder.
So you can see it in different forms. Yeah. So the whole idea is that a concept of pareidolia means when you look at the clouds, right, and the pattern of that cloud, somebody might relate it to some animal face, somebody might relate to something else. So you see things in your own way,
sure,
right? And so the time which you save, you can spend doing things which you like in your own way. So if you love baking, you can spend time doing baking. If you save time doing laundry, so that's our whole brand identity concept, right? So
that's great.
So do what you love, and don't spend time doing the laundry. Now, other important aspect of this is about the convenience, right? So when I talked about grocery as a chore, what really online brought was convenience, right? Yeah. So I have, and then very important from a consumer experience perspective, that since I am as a consumer facing time poverty, right, I want some solution which kind of takes care of all the uncertainties around that. Because if I order online 10 items, I expect all 10 to come, and I expect them to come on time.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Otherwise, you will not solve my problem, because I am waiting for that order to be delivered to be used for my breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Yeah.
Right? So hence, operationally, you have to really structure everything so that you are able to deliver on that convenience and that promise. So in the chaos which is there, which I just talked about in terms of traffic, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important to then build on that convenience aspect of it, which is what here we are trying again in LaundryMate, because...
And I'm going to interrupt you just to give context to our listeners. Bangalore, it's those that sit in traffic in the United States, the traffic that you can find in India is a whole nother level, right? It's a whole nother, another game. Yeah. And it's almost like you have to be here. And those that have been here, they're probably listening are smiling. Yeah, and they get it. It's a whole other thing. But the size of Bangalore, I mean, just to give our listeners context as to the size of just this city alone. Mm-hmm. is how large would you say like your service area is?
So it would be, I would say, from the center of the city, it would be close to 20-kilometer radius.
Yep.
Right. So that's the size of the city. Right. So it would be like any other big city, but it is densely populated. Mm-hmm. Right. And somehow the development in terms of road infrastructure and all of that was not planned for such a big city, right? This was a kind of a retirement, for the defense and that kind of people. So the city was kind of planned in a very different way, very small, because the weather over here is good, right? So people wanted to come and settle down over here later on. So what has happened is the road infrastructure is poor, and city has grown big, and then that's kind of leads to 2-lane roads are actually being used at 8 lanes.
Yeah,
right, because the cars are so close to each other.
Right, we noticed that it's whatever the lane is, whatever the lanes are, you then multiply it by a factor of 4. That's the lanes that will turn into.
Yes.
And it seems that Bangalore plays an important. It seems that Bangalore played an important role for you to have proofs of concepts and then scale them to the rest of India in that sense. Allow me to share some talks with you. I'm born and raised in Turkey, spent some time in Istanbul, which in my opinion comparable to both Bangalore and Delhi in terms of size and chaos to some extent, including traffic. What I can see is the problems I think there's 2 major disruption you are providing to the people of India. As an immigrant in my journey, I started in a low-income family in Turkey, and then had a journey to becoming a middle-income household member in the United States. And what I'm seeing in your solutions, both in LaundryMate and also with Big Basket, you are basically disrupting the difference between low income, mid income, high income by honestly solving the problems that everyone is facing.
Right.
And you are bringing maybe not the income level, but you are bringing the ease of life to the same level, and you are eliminating the barriers of income level, regardless of what the income level is. You are just basically lifting the big parts of population up, and then they are actually getting better services here in India compared to an average American middle income household member like myself. Honestly, your services are superior to what we have in the US, which makes me think. Sorry for the long winded because it's very inspiring. Which makes me think. If I will say your name, Abhinay. Abhinay is solving this problem of India, and he is solving his track record of that. How about going beyond India? As a Turkish person, I can clearly see LaundryMate definitely working in Turkey, in Istanbul, and also beyond. Why not in Chicago? Why not in London? Why not in Berlin?
So, good point you raised there. And obviously the enabler here is technology. The reason you are able to really bridge those gaps between various income groups is by using technology, which is actually now very, very cheap, right? And it's in everybody's hand. So, go back 20, 25 years, when there was no internet, there was, you can't have solutions like this because a first generation entrepreneur like me who comes from a very, very, very kind of, a middle income, that kind of a background, can't set up businesses in India, right? Because they're very, very capital intensive, so all of that stuff. Because of internet, because of technology, you are able to bring solutions to common people and bridge that gap, right? So that's another important factor really, which is critical, right? So definitely some of these solutions can go to other countries, right? But I would kind of just a word of caution there. Now, every country and every category in a country is actually quite unique, right? So unless you understand the nuances of that, right, you should not just jump into, I have done it in one place, let me just go it somewhere else, right? Because it is it is sometimes bound to fail if you just extend, a success of one country to other countries. For example, again, I'll come back to grocery, right? So Instacart in US, right? I'm sure you guys must be familiar, which is an asset light model, right? And they were just doing the pickup and the delivery, right? They didn't had any stores, they had no warehouses, nothing, right? They will just pick from a store and deliver it to the customer, right? And they will charge delivery charges because the customer there is willing to pay delivery charge, right? If you come to India, right, and if you just, let's say, launch Instacart in Bangalore, right, and I talked about the issues which the stores have, wherein if a customer places an order for 20 items, the guy has to go to three stores to pick all of that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Imagine the amount of time he's spending, right? And then because of the traffic and everything else, again, that's another issue. And then third is Indian consumer doesn't want to pay delivery charges.
Yeah.
So your business will not be viable, right? Irrespective of whatever scale you achieve, because every order you will lose. So there were 2-3 players who actually came on the asset light model in India, inspired by Instacart and backed by large VCs, right?
Sure.
Of the likes of SoftBank, Tiger, Sequoia. But they just can't make it work. And then they realize that, if I have to succeed in this category in India, I have to have carry inventory. I have to have assets.
Yeah.
So they pivoted to big basket model of carrying inventory in a matter of 2 years.
Yeah, wow.
Right. So I'm just saying, I'm just kind of, because I also shared that in let's say countries like US, you have currently solutions being catered to different income groups in different ways, because those are all evolved over several decades, right? But there could be economies, there could be countries wherein they're at similar stage of evolution, facing similar kind of a problem. Then you can definitely export that solution. But I would not say this can definitely go to 50 countries, right? Yeah. But you have to really understand the ground realities and then say this will work or not work.
You need to understand your business.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you need to understand it.
Yeah.
And different markets are going to be different.
Right.
Why are you here? Like, why aren't you an engineer? Why aren't you, you're an entrepreneur. You've a serial entrepreneur. You're a successful entrepreneur, right? So I get why you're here, at this moment. But, when you had your first thought that this is what I'm going to do, why did you take the path that you took?
So, I mean, like any typical engineer wanting to, again, aspiring to do well in life, coming from a middle class background, how do you do well? Okay, do MBA, right? So I did MBA, right? And from one of the top schools in the country. And after passing out from there, then I did join a corporate job with Mitsubishi Corporation. With that time, it was 1997. So they were the Fortune #1, in fact, in that year. I joined them because I was interested in a business which they were setting up as a joint venture in India, along with Unilever, which was the cold chain, which is a supply and distribution of frozen and chilled products. So I was interested in that space. So I joined them, worked with them for almost 3 years. And that's when the first wave of .coms came to India. I'm talking about 99, 2000, right? And India was obviously, there were hardly any .coms that point of time. It was just the first wave. Right? Amazon started, mid-90s and stuff. So that point of time itself, I actually, kind of got very influenced that, you can do something, you can build a business on internet without much investment of sorts, right? And I had some experience of dealing in the apparel fashion space because in my hometown in Bhopal, we had a small shop which was set up by my sister, and we used to deal in, export surplus garments, which are good quality but low price, and hence they get sold in the domestic market. So my sister was running that, and I used to be, part of that. So I had some exposure to the fashion garments kind of thing. I said, nobody's doing online garments in India, online fashion. I should start that.
I believe it's stylecountry.com, right?
Yes, that's stylecountry.com.
Yeah.
So that was launched in 2000. So I actually moved from Chennai. I was in Chennai with Mitsubishi Corporation, moved to Bangalore in December 99, launched this in 2001, and it lasted for just few months, because the market was just not ready. It was too early for the market. Few years later, actually, a brand called Myntra got launched, which was finally bought by Flipkart, which is now owned by Walmart. So it was just a bad timing. But I learned a lot in that first, and that's what I applied when I started Big Basket in 2010. So it's been kind of, in between I did work in between I did work for some corporate job, then came back. And once I started 2009-10 Big Basket, that kind of had a good success. I'm continued to be on the entrepreneur journey journey now.
Do you think it was those relationships that allowed you to make that leap from corporate? And here's why. I mean, particularly, we're involved with Kellogg School of Management's executive MBA program, and we run into and we have become very good friends with a lot of people that are in the C-suite or going to be going into the C-suite, and you talk to them, and deep down they kind of say, I'd love to someday have my own startup. I'd love to start from scratch, and they work for some pretty significant companies, but they share, I would love to take that leap. But there's a lot of different reasons why they don't. Maybe security. I'm already on this path, whatnot. What would you tell them? Would you tell them, hey, just stick to what you're doing, or how would you say, figure out how to pursue maybe those dreams, even though you might be headed to the C-suite?
I guess, it's very important to, try it out for sure, right? Because, and then, fail fast if you want to, call it that way, right? So, because especially the people who are from, Ivy League, B school graduates and stuff like that, the experience which you will get in that short window of when you try something on your own, you will not get experience in any corporate world in even 10x that time, right? Because your role will be so limited, right? So you should definitely try it out. Even if you fail, the learning is so much, the market will value more than what you would otherwise get in the job which you are doing, right? And if you succeed, then obviously you're on a different trajectory altogether, right? My sincere advice is, for example, when I did Style Country in 2000, right? I had to shut it down in just 6 months. Then I went back to corporate. I worked for 8 years, right? And then I started Big Basket. So, but that learning of 2000 in the 6 months is what I applied in 2010. Right. So it stays with you, right? So
I will tell you one of the takeaways that I think we were talking about this. I think one of our takeaways from this experience that we've had here is there is not a fear of failure. Right. As much, maybe there's a little bit, right? But definitely not as much as I would say we see in the States, right? Right. There's, failure has a stigma. I don't necessarily think that is here as much. People are actually like, oh yeah, I've failed multiple times, and people are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to hire you because you've learned something. They view it as a failure is a positive thing.
It has changed in the recent past. It was worse than as a stigma compared to other countries 15 years back. It has changed in the last, I would say, just 5-10 years back, right? Because if you are a failure, if you are a graduate at MBA and you try your own business and you fail, then nobody wants to touch it. Right? You will not get married and stuff like that. But things have changed drastically because the whole ecosystem has evolved. There are so many success stories, and people who have failed and then tried again and then become successful. So things have changed drastically, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years, right? And that's when you see so much, so many entrepreneurs who are openly even talking about failure, right? Because that's no more a stigma, right? So it has gone through that journey. It was pretty bad, I would say, 10, 15 years back.
It's also really refreshing to hear, being able to have the conversations about failure and what you learn, and as opposed to keeping it quiet, right?
I have one idea, which I have one potential answer to your question from my perspective, which I would love to ask Abhinay. I think one reason is probably having some support network like here, which is your family. Like there is only like some depth that you can fall, but in the US, when you fall, there's like no end in that like falling. That's my thinking. Like coming from like also an emerging market, also different culture maybe in the East, I will say. The reliance on the family and your support network that gives you a lot of confidence, and you think that, hey, what if I fail? If I fail, I have this support network like for me. Would that be like true for the Indian culture and Indian entrepreneur mindset, in your opinion?
Actually, support network is there, but it's in a different context. It's not in a that kind of a context, right? So, for example, for a lot of the entrepreneurs, they are actually already away from their families and then they are living like a nuclear life. I mean, that transition started long time back, right? So I'm talking about for a lot of people, right? People who are in still joint families and all, that's a different matter, right? Somebody tries, fails, you are still part of the joint family. I mean, there's no issues, right? You can continue even if you're not earning, still your family is well off. So that's a different scenario. But I'm talking for working professionals who have already kind of, come out and they are living their own lives as nuclear family, husband, wife with kids and all of that. Then the support network from that perspective is kind of missing. It's similar to what you'll have otherwise anywhere else in the world, right?
Like but the person who left Infosys, you had, I think, the moment you left Infosys, you had a bright future with the organization, I believe, and it's one of the most fascinating companies in the world, in that field. Yeah. You had a bright future, and then you started BigBasket.com.
Right.
You are talking about that particular transition, leaving the luxuries and the secure future of Infosys. We visited them. Excellent facilities, by the way. So there's that, right? You're talking about the moment, the breaking point,
the inflection point. The inflection point that makes you say.
So for a lot of people, actually, to your point, as you raised earlier, right? For a lot of people, you don't want to take that risk.
Yeah.
I mean, though the general perception and stigma has come down but for a lot of people, it still applies. Yeah. Because I have such a comfortable, life. Everything is going fine. Why should I take risk? And as you grow more and more older, then that risk kind of. So fortunately for me, my first .com attempt was before I got married. So that was 2000. I was still single, right? Yeah. So somehow, that experience, that learning, and the whole desire to do something right on your own stayed, right, and kept trying, and then finally, in 2010 is when then I was able to do something.
Having this style country, the incomplete story of style country, needed to continue. Big Basket.
Exactly.
Well, it's also sitting here listening to you. It's listeners might go, wow, he's making it sound so easy. Right. And we know it's not, but I mean it's also the other day we were at a talking with a private equity venture capital firm, and an exceptional firm, and they also focus on social impact investing as well. And they were saying, and this isn't like a huge fund, but a good sized one. And, they say they look at 1,000 entrepreneur projects. They narrow it down to maybe 100. From there, they start talking to the founders. And from there, it gets cut down to maybe 40, just based off of the conversations they're having, let alone business model. Yeah. And then they maybe invest in 3 that year, right? 1,000 to 3, which tells me, entrepreneurship isn't easy necessarily. So, with that backdrop, what's the not easy part about what you do? Even today as a serial successful serial entrepreneur, what's the not easy part?
Yeah, I mean, the first time is obviously quite tough, right? I mean, when I started off, Style Country was one, but in 2010, when I started off as Big Basket, I had very limited capital to start with, right? Which was just in Indian currency, which just 25 lakhs is all I had of my personal money. But the belief was that, I know how to set up the front end. I need to find how do I solve the back end side of it, right? And actually, I tied up with Metro Cash and Carry, which is the German, B2B large player in the country, right? So that, and they are a B2B player, right? So they could act as my back end. And backend is very capital intensive, right? So that's the way I kind of set it up. I used my capital to set up the front end side of it, and I leveraged their entire supply chain in terms of their store and processing and stocking and all of that. So without carrying any inventory, zero inventory, you can call it like asset light. But so without any inventory, I was able to launch a grocery business by offering an assortment of around 5,000 products. And I did something which they have never done anywhere in the world, which is IT integration with them. Basis the availability of the inventory on their shelves, I used to get inventory feed, and basis that I used to show to my customer whether this product is available or not available.
Wow. And
basis what the orders come is, then I used to then pick from them and then deliver it to my customers. So it was a zero inventory with a very limited capital. I did that, right? But you need a longer runway. right? So that's when the whole tough side came, right? Then when I was out of my own personal funds of 25 lakhs, right? Then I wanted to obviously raise capital, and raising capital sometimes very, very challenging. As I said, this I'm talking about as an experience the first time, right? So I had to take that tough call of actually selling my house. So I did end up selling my house.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. You all.
So things get obviously quite challenging. Things becomes quite tough, and then you have to stay the course sometimes. And that is one way to look at it, because you see, how the response, from the customers, how is it tracking some of that, right? So your conviction and all of that stuff, right? At the same time, if you flip it, you should be able to kind of also take a call, is this working or not, right? So sometimes that becomes a very, very hard call, right? Because if you continue to stick and it's still not working, then you go down a very different trajectory, right? So those are some of the tough things which you have to really deal with, right? I mean, at a personal level. So I see that there is a traction. I see there is customer need for this. It's going fine, right? But I need to obviously raise capital. How do I get a longer runway? So that's when you take some of those hard calls, right? Yeah.
So let's focus on the funding aspects.
Yeah.
We have been talking a lot about, you are an entrepreneur. We can tell that you could probably, I think LaundryMate is going to be very successful based on your experience. And if there is going to be another story after LaundryMate, I think you will probably never stop. It seems so. But then many entrepreneurs, myself included, could not reach to this funding point. And then when you are in the territory, and things can get really interesting.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs are not made their cut is normally not for finance.
Yeah.
It's a very different ball game to play, right?
Right.
And I'm looking Big Basket had close to 20 rounds of funding.
Right.
And it did exponentially grow.
Yes.
You witnessed a lot of rounds of funding.
Right.
What was the how did you manage that funding process without coming from finance, without having finance subject matter expertise?
Yeah, so actually it's tough the first time, right? Your first round is really the toughest, right? And in case of Big Basket, actually, so we were 5 co-founders. The other 4 co-founders who joined later on already had done one of their earlier startups, and they have exited. So they were more familiar with that whole process relative to my experience, right? So hence that whole team of 5, the first round, it was tough to even do the first round with that kind of a team as well. But whenever we managed to do that, then afterwards it was not that challenging. So a lot of entrepreneurs who are doing it for the first time, it's obviously it's a bit of learning. But have you done that just one round, then you learn it. You learn it fast, and then you have somebody who has already invested on your side then, who will then kind of help you through the process in the Series B, C, D, because he's now part of your organization, right? So then the learning becomes obviously it's pretty fast, and you pick up the stuff and all of that, right? But the first time entrepreneur, first time funding is always very challenging, right? And it's an important area which I think people who are venturing out on their own should really kind of expose themselves, learn as much as possible, have somebody from that field as with some relation, some network, some mentor, so that they guide you through that process. Fortunately, there are a lot of now accelerators and that kind of, which have come up, which primarily help entrepreneurs actually understand that journey, right? But at the same time, as you said, even after you do 1 or 2 times, this things might become a bit tricky, right? So there's no a silver bullet that this is all solved forever, right? It's never, because as you said that we had multiple rounds, yes, but every other round is actually at a different level. Right.
Yeah.
So that challenge or that uncertainty still sometimes lingers around. Right. So, for example, when earlier you're raising 10 mil, then you're raising 300 mil. Right, 300 mil raise is a very different ballgame than a 10 million raise.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Right, so how the business actually need to perform over a period of time so that you are able to then continue to grow and raise capital is the operational aspect side of it.
Yeah.
Right, how you are executing, how well the business is doing. Right, so you have to focus on that. Right. how much of revenue you are able to generate to raise the next round and all. So that's the other angle, right, that will come in, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that, and this is actually what brought Volkan and I together in terms of understanding the entrepreneur, but then also the investor aspect. It's been interesting how many entrepreneurs and even entrepreneurs that we've met here that now have some incredibly successful businesses who acknowledge they started their startup, their business, with very little understanding of what it takes to actually raise. When you get to that point, congratulations, you've succeeded. You're now raise money, and they, I think some of them learned some really hard lessons because they didn't understand that. And also to your point, which I think is really powerful, is by taking that time as an entrepreneur to understand that, even if you're not at that stage yet, but understand it, a lot of times will guide your decision making in terms of what you need to do now in order to get to that level faster, to get to that revenue positive that attracts the investors, getting smart money, strategic partners. I think I just want to emphasize that point that it's amazing how many don't spend the time to get financially literate.
Just to add over there, so it's very important to, sometimes you're just chasing the fundraise, right? You are not looking beyond the fundraise. Actually, what you should do, this is something which obviously you learn first time you say, anybody and everybody who can give me funds, I'll just raise and go, right? Because that's your main priority. It's very, very important to see who you are raising your funds, right? Who's that person? Right? What is the value add that person is really going to do in your business, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you get a wrong investor, despite the best idea, despite the best effort, you might still fail because the investor was wrong. So there was no alignment. It's like a marriage. Right? So it's very, this is something you start appreciating only over a period of time. But for a lot of people, I just need funds. I don't care from where it comes. That is the first reaction, right? Because otherwise it's a no-go, right?
They're trying to survive.
But it's very important for people. Now, since the very fact, I'm sure things are different in other countries, but India again has evolved. The whole ecosystem has evolved a lot. So in 2009 to 10, there were a handful of VCs, right? But today there are hundreds of them, right? And then they all, since the industry itself has evolved, everybody has positioned themselves that I'm a seed guy, I'm a Series A, I'm a Series B, I'm Series C. Within that, I'm in this sector. And they really make a conscious effort to kind of pitch themselves that why you should take money from me. So I'm saying the thing evolves over a period. When you have only a handful of guys, you have no choice but to deal with them and stuff like that, right? But as the industry, as the ecosystem evolves and matures, then it's very, very important for the first time, especially for the first time entrepreneurs, to choose the right investor, right? And don't go by valuation. If I have two guys, somebody is giving me a higher valuation than the other guy, but the guy who's getting lower valuation will add more value. I can always make up this valuation over a longer period of time, right?
On these lines, how do you identify risk? Not identify, but how do you? The question would be:
the investors,
and not just investors. As an entrepreneur, how do you see the risk coming to your way, and how do you distinguish and something between being a real risk and just noise? How do you make that judgment call, and is there any advice that you can give for the first time entrepreneurs on that end?
You mean in terms of the VC selection?
Not VC selection in general. Maybe I should have just made it clear. No, I can edit this. But how do you see risk coming to your way when you are running your business, including raising funding?
Right.
And how do you distinguish risk and being serious and or just being
it's almost, I'm going to use, this might be a bad analogy. You might have to edit this, but the analogy is how do you know? You're standing in the middle of a Bangalore road. How do you know the truck that's coming at you is going to stop versus keep going?
Right.
It's how do you know what risk is real risk versus it's not.
Yeah, no. So I mean, specific to the fund side of it and the partnership side of it, I think it's part of the discussion, right? You really kind of able to once you discuss with multiple people, right? It's not that you will go and talk to one guy and it's a yes and no, right? You will talk to maybe 15, 20, 50 guys, right? Before you are able to really, and in your conversations, you see, how each of them is kind of reacting to the whole business proposition itself, right? And what are they really saying? What is good? What is bad? What is of interest to them? So then you will be able to really differentiate that. Who is thinking on lines of what I am thinking versus who is thinking on a very different trajectory, right? So that will help you. The conversations with those people will help you. And when you talk about, this is the way I want to do it, this is the way I want to build it, this is the way I go going. And if there are disagreements or differences in that discussion itself, then right? And you can always also talk to, right, their investee companies before you pick any guy, right? You can always talk to their investee companies, their founders, saying, how has this guy been? Right? You got him in early in the series A or C, how this guy has been. So you can then, it's like a reference check of sorts, right? I mean, right, before you get married to a girl, you also do the reference checks, right?
And gut feelings, like moments. There are some moments in life, in which you have data available to you.
Right.
And sometimes you make decisions based on your gut feeling.
Yes.
And in your journey, which has been, you lived actually many lifetimes in one person's lifetime, so far.
Yeah.
And you are dedicated and motivated to do it again.
Right.
So how about these moments? Are there any breaking points on at which you just made a decision based on your gut feeling, which was against the data that was provided to you?
Yeah, it happens. I mean, as I said, you can't be 100% right. You can't be perfect all the time. So there could be sometimes you take, wrong calls or stuff like that, and things might go wrong. But it's also the flexibility, the whole, your title is low ego, high impact, right? So you cannot have ego come in. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you realize something has gone wrong, right, and then you have to really quickly learn and correct yourself. You cannot stick to saying, this is what I did and I believe in myself and this is the way it has to be. You can't be like that, right? Every day, right, morning to evening, if it comes to, you have to kind of really change your thought process. You have to change your decision. You have to change your way of, because that's the only way you can succeed. Right? If you just get stuck with something, right, even after realizing, right, that, this is something that's gone wrong, but you can say, you can throw your weight and throw your scenario. No, this is something, I believe in. Sometimes, if it goes wrong, you have to be in a position to correct it, without really, despite whatever it is, right? But at the same time, a lot of times those gut calls needs to be taken like that, and they do work in your favor because you don't have really all the time to keep on discussing and debating, right? Yeah. So, but I'm saying, you take those calls still with those, but if wherever it goes wrong, you correct it fast, right? Yeah.
Allow me ask one final question.
I have one after yours.
Yeah.
I have the closer.
You lived multiple lifetimes in your lifetime. So, and you have been interacting with a lot of people, and the solutions that you developed and offered, they are really very real solutions. It's not just tech or software.
Yeah.
Right? You are solving real problems of real people.
Yeah.
And I think on a daily basis, you're interacting with a great variety of people, from your clients to top niche investors sitting in really fancy locations all around the world.
Right.
So in this broad spectrum, you have your team members, you have seen big Fortune 100, maybe 10 companies, you work there, right? In this great big range, who is the most impactful personality or character or segment that really impacted your life the most?
That's a tough one to pick one out of several. But I mean, just to so my ex-boss in one of my jobs, right, who was a very, very different kind of a individual, right? He was very, very approachable, you can very openly discuss things with him, right? So he has been, I would say, my sounding board, right? When I did the first time, right? And the second time onwards, you already have kind of got so much exposure, so much of learning, and then know a lot of stuff. But first time somebody acting as your sounding board and giving you the right advice, right, was my, so who actually was in Chicago, I talked about, right? So in my earlier, so he's a PhD. He was with Accenture as a partner for several years, and then he was heading consulting for iGet Global. So he was my kind of a sounding board, right? So that amount of time. So
thank you for sharing.
The question, we started this might be a good question to end on, as we started initially with India, right? And everything that we're saying. The other day I made a comment. I've come to India and I've seen the future. In a discussion with you, we talked about the growth of VCs, the growth of entrepreneurs, just the market, how it's growing. India's only getting started.
Yeah.
Right. It's only getting started.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's already becoming one of the hubs. The number of unicorns that are coming out of here, and it's getting started.
Yeah.
But our problems, and India too has its challenges that it's working to overcome, just like every country.
Yeah.
But it's also just getting started. Where do you see India 20 years from now? If you ever decide to, slow down, right? If that ever happens, where do you see your country?
Yeah, I mean, so if you really go back, I mean, in terms of the country's growth, evolution, whatever, right? So that whole industrial revolution, which was kind of, I mean, I'm talking way back like Europe, US, and then the whole automation industrial revolution, which is led by Japan, and then finally China, right? So here there are so many things to be still done, right? The infrastructure itself is requires so much of investment, right? So because that's one enabler for a country to really kind of grow, right? And infrastructure, we talked about every 2 lane is an 8 lane kind of a
yeah.
So actually sometimes infrastructure also helps, right, to become more productive as a country, right? I mean, as I talked about grocery shopping and doing laundry at home, these are the activities you're doing on a daily basis. And there are a lot of stuff which you do outside. You have to travel, you have to, so that's wherein you are wasting a lot of your time.
Yeah.
So when, as a country, all of these things kind of get sorted out, I'm getting, good, I have good solutions, good services, good infrastructure, right? Then obviously the country's growth becomes that much more powerful, right? So it's definitely just starting. I definitely see next 25 to 50 years of this 7, 8, 9% kind of a growth,
wow,
right? Because that much needs to be done, right? I mean, where we are today versus what needs to be achieved in terms of infrastructure and growth in all of these sectors, and we have the working population for that, as you pointed out right in the beginning, right? That large population is in the working age group, right? Less than 25, right? So that way. I mean, it's definitely 25 to 50 years of, I would say, high growth is what I see in future.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for speaking with us. And would love to host you next time you're in Chicago.
Yeah.
And look forward to coming back and visiting with you and seeing what you're doing next.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for this podcast, and I really loved interacting with both of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for diving deep with us on another episode of LEHI, Low Ego, High Impact Mindset. Join us every week as we discover the stories, strategies, and insights that will empower you to grow personally and professionally. Stay inspired and catch you in the next one.